Welcome back to the broadcast and thank you for staying with us. Now, there have been at least a dozen cases of gun violence and fatal shootings involving licensed firearm holders in Kenya within the last 2 years. Some of them mostly caught on camera drawing their guns to shoot at those they believe cause them danger. Unfortunately, they do it even when their security detail does not see that danger and don't draw their guns. Tonight on our Inside Out, our Special Projects Crimes and Investigations Unit explores the gun menace in Kenya in this week's episode, House of Guns. Here is Brian Obuya.
On a random Friday afternoon, chaos erupted in the Thika municipality. The chaos were about a market. There were at least 4 members of parliament facing off with Kamenu MCA Peter Mburu and his supporters over the launch of the project. Thika Town MP Alice Ng'ang'a, alongside Kikuyu MP Kimani Ichung'wah and Gatundu South MP Gabriel Kagombe, were claiming credit for the Kiganjo market, and so was Peter Mburu's group. And in the full glare of the cameras, violence began. A police report of the incident shows that the fracas was charged a second time when MP Gabriel Kagombe drew his gun and began shooting indiscriminately towards the MCA's group. The police say, in so doing, Kagombe shot a man. That man was David Ndwati. David Ndwati died. On Friday, June 7th, Kagombe was charged with murder, charges he denied, before being released on a 1 million Kenya shillings cash bail.
I trust that the judicial process is going to take place and everyone is going to get justice, as that is the work of the courts to ensure that they deliver justice to everybody.
That of Kagombe and many other instances of gun violence in Kenya involving politicians have come to show you are more likely to be shot by a Kenyan member of parliament than by a thug out there. To get a clearer picture of this crisis, I spoke to 2 gentlemen, and that is George Musamali and engineer Sammy Onyango. These 2 have great experience in handling guns and assorted firearms. Musamali has been a firearms trainer before, while Sammy was the Secretary General of Gun Owners Association and is a certified trainer and firearms dealer. I asked this duo a lot of questions regarding the licensing process. Are we staring at a gun violence crisis as a country? I began.
We are already in that crisis, and the most unfortunate bit is that gun violence that we're witnessing currently is not from the bandits, it's not from the criminal. It's emanating from people who have been licensed to handle firearms. And this brings into question the merit of issuing these licenses to these people and the demerits of not issuing. And basically, if you look, we have the Firearm Licensing Board that has the responsibility of vetting all firearms applicants and doing the threat and risk analysis on these persons before going ahead and either denying the license or giving the go-ahead for the person to purchase a firearm. And basically, if I look very closely, this process has been abused. And that is why we have firearms, people issued with firearm licensing permits that do not merit. And that is where the problem lies.
If you look at the population of licensed firearm holders in Kenya, I think the last time I saw the records was around between 8,000 to 10,000. And if you look at the 10,000 people who own these private firearms, you would realize that a good percentage are not known. People do not know. If I would ask you to count for me how many people you know who own firearms, you would not count for me 10 or 15 people who own these firearms. So it is something which is used for the purpose that you requested for. For the status to say that it's only for the rich, of the people who feel that they've come into money, now they need to own a firearm, then I would say I think it is a perception. And that is not the status of it today. Because I'm not rich. I'm rich at heart. I'm rich at many other things. But I would not call myself to be somebody who would be in a category of the people who are given the firearms because they want to boast out and to show. Out of the 10,000, you could find 1% who could be with that mindset. But to me, it is all about the mindset.
The process of owning a gun in Kenya is a rigorous one, or at least it's supposed to be that way. It starts from as low as the ward commanders at the police station all the way to the regional level.
From the regional level, these documents, if they recommend you, will end up at the Firearm Licensing Board, where you will equally be vetted. And you will find that sitting on that board, we have the police representation, we have DCI representation, we have the county regional commissioner representation, we have the NIS representation. And these are the final people that will now determine from all the other vettings that yes, there's merit to issue you with a firearm. If they feel you do not meet and there are no grounds for this, they will deny the license. But as rigorous as the process is, you will find that the usual problem that we have in Kenya is corruption. We will have people who do not merit, people who do not deserve being issued firearms, and this is exactly where the problem is.
Some members of parliament have been accused of misuse of firearms, reckless shootings that sometimes turn fatal. Some of these members of parliament have been charged with murder or attempted murder. Some way, somehow, their prosecution has yielded nothing. So is it a must for elected members of parliament to have firearms?
It's not a must, and it's not anywhere in the law. And that's why I said, before we issue a firearm to any person, we do a threat and risk analysis. You come and say, I face this threat. We interrogate that threat and say, can this threat translate to a risk? And then we decide on whether to issue or not to issue. But the problem in Kenya right now is that we've made a firearm a symbol of status. Just like when you have small money, you decide to buy a V8, people now with V8s will want to have firearms. And that is why you'll find that so many people with little money will corrupt the system and then get issued with a firearm. And this is now where misuse comes in. That is why you'll find that instead of using the firearm as a weapon for self-defense, we've used it for status, so that everybody knows that George nowadays carries a firearm. It is not right to do that. Members of parliament, as much as they're in position of leadership, they also need to go through that same rigorous process. They need to be vetted. We need to look at the threat and then see if there's a risk before we decide now that we can issue them with a firearm. But nowadays, anybody that gets into leadership, political leadership positions, will demand to be issued with a firearm. We've seen MCAs donning firearms. We've seen MPs donning firearms. We've seen ministers carrying firearms, whereas they are provided for with security by the government, which is legal, which is a legal requirement. So basically they don't need a firearm. So the process has been abused. We don't look at the merits and demerits before we issue these licenses. We're just giving them as a token to these politicians.
I wouldn't say that I think members of parliament have not been done for the right thing, but I would say this, that it is totally wrong for you to use your firearm for purposes that are not meant and purposes that are not proper. You cannot discharge your firearm in a crowded area, not being conscious of the final resting place of the bullet. I don't know if you understand what I mean by that. It is not possible for you to remove projectiles out of an instrument that you know that would fly in the direction where people are or people could be, and that projectile could harm, and use it for purposes of scaring people, threatening people. That is totally not correct. And I wouldn't mince my words by saying that. It is totally not correct, because we are trained, and we do train people. And equally, the parliament knows that we have instructors in Kenya. There are instructors who are police officers. There are civilian instructors who would train members of parliament on how to consciously use their firearms. And when they are trained well in their conscious status, they would be able to discharge the use of that particular firearm in an unconscious status, but it's going to be in a controlled environment. So that is what they need to adopt. Training is important because that training comes with awareness. If you're trained on something, then you're made aware of it.
In January 2020, Embakasi Member of Parliament Babu Owino was arrested after he shot and seriously injured a DJ at the Big Club in Nairobi. The DJ would later be identified as Felix Orinda alias DJ Evolve. The court accused police of shoddy investigations in that trial. On election day, August 2022, a bodyguard to parliamentary aspirant Brian Haemba was shot and killed at the Chebuhwabi polling station in Kimilili. The incumbent MP, Didmas Baraza, was arrested and charged with murder. He got away. The prosecution was accused of not producing enough evidence. Despite witnesses telling police otherwise, the ballistics examiner told the court that Didmas Baraza's gun did not shoot at anything that day. In July of 2023, Nakuru Town Member of Parliament Samuel Arama got the attention of many after he drew his gun to scare away protesters in Nakuru Town. The parliamentarian said he did so to protect businesses from being raided. His actions brought to question gun handling etiquette, with many arguing the MP had broken the rules and posed a danger to those around him during the incident. And so I asked firearms handler Sammy Onyango what one can do and not do as a private firearms holder.
You've rightly put it. It's a private firearm. It is privately for yourself. This firearm is for you to protect you and the reasons that you had put up and said that I need a firearm because my daily business, my life, your personal, your individual life is a threat. And it is there's likelihood of you being followed by other people, being attacked by other people because of the genuine kind of jobs that you do. So that would require you to be given that firearm. Now that firearm is for that purpose. It is not for you to become a police officer. It is not for you to drive out in the middle of the night seeking to see where there could be trouble so that you can use your firearm to go and do that. Neither are you a riot police officer that where you see a commotion, you would come out with your firearm and discharge it to scare away people. This is not a toy, neither is it a product for threat. It is for protection, for you to protect your life. So it is for private use.
From my training, yeah, you don't draw your gun unless you want to use it. And the moment you do this is when you feel there's a threat and that threat can translate to a risk. So the do's and don'ts are there. It's only that they are being abused. And the other arm that is supposed to make sure the enforcement of this act is adhered to is the police and the firearm licensing board. And they have abdicated their duties. And this is now where we're having all these problems. Because people licensed to carry firearms are not being accountable to the board. They're not being accountable to the police. Because of what? Political alienations.
Immediately you get this firearm, you must understand the mechanism of the firearm. How does it operate? And you'll be given the safety rules, which are the 4 cardinal safety rules of a firearm. And the first one says, treat all firearms as if they are loaded. Whether you've removed the magazine, whether you unloaded it by yourself, you must always make sure, always at all time, treat it as loaded. The second rule tells you, never point this firearm at anything you do not intend to destroy. It must always be pointed in a safe direction. One safe direction and a secondary safe direction. It should never point at anything you don't intend to destroy. Should never. There is no excuse of saying it did. No. If it is an uncontrolled environment where many people are there, then there are ways to muzzle it so that you muffle it as you move, or you holster it and you keep it in that safe place where it is supposed to be. Because when it comes out, you have a target and you must engage that target by pointing at it, facing at it, and firing at it. Then the other rule tells you that you must keep your finger, this finger that pulls the trigger, has to be kept away from the trigger at all times. until you're sure and ready to engage the target. So remember, the first rule tells you it must be treated as loaded at all times. The second rule tells you don't point at anything you don't intend to destroy. The third rule tells you don't put your finger on this trigger. Make sure the trigger guide is as clear as you can see it. Don't even put it somewhere here. As clear as you can see it at all times until you're sure of your target and what you need to engage. Until you're sure. Not assuming, until you're sure. The fourth rule tells you that you must know your target. Be sure of it, what is in front of it, and what is beyond it. So there's no way I can say that I pointed at him, shot at him, but the bullet went through and shot somebody else. Immediately I notice there is an armed threat behind you. Then I'm supposed to change the trajectory of the bullet. If I go to my knee, if I go sleeping down, I will shoot you, the bullet will go in a different direction. It will take a different path, and I've got chances of saving the person behind. Maybe the chances could be 50, but I tried. And if I just shoot it aimlessly, then it's going to shoot 3 or 4 people, wound others, and fatally injure others.
Former nominated Senator Ben Njoroge almost shot at Polycarp Igathe and his Vivo Energy Company staff during an exercise to repossess a petrol station on February 7, 2017. Video footage showed the senator threatening the staff and Igathe. He then fires aimlessly in what appeared to us as an accidental discharge. But Onyango says there should never be an accidental shot.
The 4 cardinal rules, if followed, you'll never come to a case where you hear there was an accidental discharge. There can never be accidental discharge if you follow those 4.
That's why I like the third one.
Yes.
Which therefore means that if you shoot me today, you actually intended to shoot me.
If I shoot you today, I would have a very slight chance of getting away with the words that I did not mean it.
No more parliament business was halted for several minutes as MPs discussed the conduct of Nyali MP Mohammed Ali. The MP, without any regard for the provisions of the law, had walked into the chambers with a firearm.
I'm not aware that a member of parliament is allowed to walk inside here with a gun. I've noticed Ali is carrying something, the Honorable Ali, in his bag. If that is a gun, then we are not safe.
We are all human beings, and sometimes we end up forgetting doing something. If my honorable colleague saw there's a problem, he could have approached me quietly, politely, and tell me to surrender, rather than announcing my name on the national television and threatening my security now.
That explanation by the Member of Parliament has always elicited the question of security at Parliament. Just how could one pass through the metal detectors with a firearm unnoticed? But perhaps one of the sad cases in recent history was in May 2022 when nominated MP David Sankok's son allegedly killed himself by shooting on the chin using the father's gun. But it was the emergence of the fact that he died of a shot from a shotgun that raised questions of how a 15-year-old handled a gun with a long handle. Engineer Sammy Onyango advocates for continued trainings of firearms handlers, saying the landscape is changing, albeit slowly.
If you look at our police officers today, do you know how much training they're getting? We used to hear of police discharging their firearms and they could damage or hit somebody when they're in a riot scenario, and this happens. Look at the trainings which are coming now from the ATA branch of the American Embassy. They are offering some very competent trainings to the police. How often now are you hearing of the police discharging their firearms and it harming anyone? It is going on the down low, because this is the kind of assistance that has come into the country. Civilians equally should take up the same. If you're a member of parliament, of course you can spare 5,000, 10,000 shillings. Go to the shooting range, get trained. know the purpose of the firearm that you're carrying. Let that not be an issue that is taking us again to be called wale watu wa mabunduki, wale makowboy wanakwanga na mabunduki, then ukitimgia kwa mahali unatembea ukionyeshana kwa kila mtu you have a firearm. Ati hiyo sasa ni display of might. No. In fact, it's a serious display of cowardice.
Back to Thika, Gigi Kagombe is out on bail. He has denied killing Ndwati. He has to do everything to ensure he proves he never shot the man. There are a few things he can do. After all, it has worked for others. In the case of Babu Owino, the court found that the investigating officer did not record a statement from DJ Evolve, the judge wondering whether it was deliberate or a case of negligence. In acquitting Babu, the court said the ballistic report did not conclusively find that Babu's firearms were used in the shooting. Any firearm holder accused of murder has to take advantage of a broken system. The ballistics expert. That is the most important person.
Of late, we've seen several MPs being left off the hook, saying that this firearm did not fire that round. So the ballistic examination is a key component when it comes to investigating gun violence, because we have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that this is the firearm that shot that round. And if we don't get it right there, then automatically we are heading for an acquittal in court. So we must link this together. The ballistic examination and the criminal investigation aspect of this.
There have been far too many shootings involving members of parliament, male members of parliament. Experts already argue Kenya is in a gun violence crisis. But it's all happening under the watch of the police, the Firearms Licensing Board, and Parliament itself, until it's too late. Brian Obuya, NTV.